Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for gathering here today on this cold winter evening. It is my immense privilege to welcome here this evening Lieutenant General Nilabh Sharma, former Governor of Mizoram in Arunachal Pradesh, and Mrs. Jyotsna Sharma, Professors Mrs. Shikha Prakash, and eminent scholars in the field such as Ms. Sanjita Ghosh. I also warmly welcome Dr. Pradhan and Dr. Roy, teaching in the United Kingdom, University of Oxford and York. I warmly welcome Mr. Nilabh Sinha, Principal Director, Art and Architecture, Intach. Intach have published the book too, and I now leave it to him. He is in the chair today. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. So good evening once again. And I'm very happy to be here today in this gathering, sitting along with this young girl, I must say. We met about, I think, 4 or 5 months back.
Yes.
And where she came to my office at Intach, and with her mother ever smiling and cheerful. And then she showed me this manuscript, and I was really, amazed to see the amount of work that she'd done. It was a very brief meeting, about half an hour or so. And there was a little bit of interest that was generated, because basically I'm not an art historian, or nothing to do with art at all. I'm in art conservation, purely into science. But Intach does have, a division called as Heritage Education and Communication, where we reach out to students on educating them on heritage, what is heritage and why it should be preserved. There's a lot of school students who are involved. There are a lot of college students who are involved. So we have network all across the India of schools. We have heritage clubs, and a little bit of activities which are involved with kids and students. Adopt a tree, adopt a monument, adopt a bird, things like that. So I thought this could be a good resource which could be through Intach. It can reach out to a lot of schools and colleges, particularly for the benefit of not only students but teachers as well. So with that bent of mind, this manuscript I accepted, and then after a couple of days I flipped through the pages, found it really interesting. So then thought of getting it peer reviewed as well, because the work, as she told me, was during the pandemic time she'd done this work, and compiling all the data through different libraries, contacting people everywhere. It was phenomenal work. So I got hold of an independent art historian, and she peer reviewed, and she came back with very good results. And she did say that it's a good work. And I think barring some minor corrections in the text and rewriting certain text and a little bit more, the manuscript was kind of approved. So that's how it was there, and she got printed. And it's lying here on the table today. So it's a phenomenal work, and I really congratulate Aparna for, at such a young age, a good work has been published. And I'm sure this is going to be very useful for students, not only today, but in times to come as well. I think it's a book of its kind. So with these words, I think, I can come to the book. A little bit about Aparna, because she's a student of history honors at Delhi University. When she met me, she was class 12 student. And she is in history honors now. In this book, she has forayed into art and history, including international criminal law, international relations, oral histories. That's some heavy stuff, I must say. Her initiation into art and history began at a young age with regular visits to museums and historical sites. It was fructified with a successful high school project on Indian art. She is a product of Sanskriti School, New Delhi, alongside the author attended lectures and workshops on art appreciation, and a specialization on European art form. Rembrandt to Goya from the University of Madrid. That's an online thing. The author is a researcher at ResearchGate Academia, Cambridge Core, Oxford Core, and American Historical Association. That's also phenomenal. She recently received a fellowship from CDBTO Youth Group, thus showcasing her diverse academic interests. And I think this is the third book that you published?
Yes, this is my third book. I would like to mention that this is a non-commercial book and broadly academic purposes available at all libraries. It is available here itself at the India International Center Library, College Library, of course school libraries, and we are moving on and increasing the web of this book and its circulation in e-copy format. It is in e-copy format. It's gone to England in the e-copy format. Other than that, other institutions, cultural institutions, educational institutions, those are our main focus. Few copies are available with us in case there are other libraries that we may miss, or there are more where we may need to send physical copies. Other than that, the circle is very tight.
Thank you. Tell me something about the book. Mughal miniature paintings on the global art scene from 1526 to 1770 is a research-based academic writing published under the aegis of the International Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage, Intach, for non-commercial research and educational purpose. The book displays a wide selection of 181 colored plates from various Indian and European museums, including the Victoria and Albert Museum, National Museum, British Museum, Windsor Castle, Royal Collection Trust, the Louvre, etc. The book is systematically divided into 10 parts, each focusing on the broader themes of this art, regional developments of the schools focusing on Ragmalas, a pictorial fusion of the tangible, Rajasthan School of Art Heritage, and intangible art of Hindustani Shastri music, vocal music of the North, touching upon the themes of mood, rasa, classification, thought, and time theory. It also deals with the Varanasa series of Bahari School, focusing on the depiction of Nayak, the heroes, and Nayakas, the heroines. In subsequent parts of the book, art conservation methods, their importance, data collection methods have been touched upon. The rich legacy of cultural exchange and sharing between India and Europe has been woven through the fabric of the book. Now I hand over the mic to her and let us all hear what she has to say now.
Thank you so much, sir, for your warm introduction. I would now like to move on to the presentation itself. Before we deep dive into the interpretation of biblical themes, allow me to take everyone on a journey into the workshops of artists in India and Renaissance Europe, introducing the techniques of art production, the European style of painting that was generally frescoed on walls, and paintings in guild halls such as the Night Watch, in palaces that were used as symbols of legitimization to make strong impacts on the viewer. Thus, color palettes were carefully chosen as dark and vibrant, generally oil-based, since animal fat and beeswax had multiple advantages, being more long-lasting, a thicker pigment that provided a glossy finish. The paintings were on, however, in India, the paintings were on various types of paper. They were used to create manuscripts. Paper, not being indigenous to India in its initial phase, was of multiple types, namely the Daulatapadi paper, the Khati paper, Sialkoti, Sultani, and Hindi. In Mughal miniature paintings that were often painted on a base of wasli, a paste of rice flour and water that made the pigments more adhesive to the surfaces on which they were painted. Now, talking about the importance of color, each hue has a significance in religion. Red, yellow, black, blue, and green have been seen to have ritual significance. Red is associated with purity in Indian culture. In Islam, the culture is barred as it is associated with pagans, as is similar with yellow. In Christianity, however, red is associated with martyrdom and the effect of intoxication. Yellow in Indian culture is associated with the quest of knowledge. In Islam, again, as mentioned earlier, it is restricted. In Christianity, it is associated with the glory of God and therefore often used in religious fresco paintings. Blue is associated with the emotions of bravery, power, stability of mind. Water, the sky, and healing. So is green, that is, on the other hand, a symbol of festivities, new beginnings, a color associated with the prophet's tribe. White and black, the base of monochromatic colors, are associated with peace, brotherhood, and humility on the one hand, while black is associated with evil. However, in Islam, it is holiness, and in Christianity, it is death. These colors were bound in India using water, gum arabic, or often water-soluble gums and binders that were naturally obtained instead of animal fats that were common in Europe. Paint brushes in India were made with the hair of squirrel tails. In Europe, Renaissance masters often used their hands, cloth, hair-based brushes, and others in order to obtain different textures and textured finishes. Moving on to the first painting that I should be looking at in some detail. Saint Jerome. This is the European interpretation of Saint Jerome. In this version of the saint, he can be seen depicted in the Greco-Roman style of attire. The traditional outfit of a Roman nobleman that symbolizes the quest of people as a whole to strive for the Greco-Roman idioms of perfection in the time of the Renaissance, with mythical qualities, also reasserting his stature as an apostle. Behind Saint Jerome himself is Gabriel in this painting, who is often the symbol of divine enlightenment in a room decorated with books, further entrenching the ideas of spiritual knowledge and awakening. On the other hand, we see the Indian version of Saint Jerome, who is painted through the eyes of Keshav Das, known for his depiction of biblical themes in the Mughal art atelier. The Indian version of Saint Jerome is depicted under what appears to be the shade of a banyan tree. A tree that in Indian culture and tradition is used to depict knowledge and enlightenment from the Buddhist period. Right, so he is also seen reclining and resting his eyes closed. In this, it can be interpreted as a symbol of his deep meditation, similar to the Buddhist schools of art as seen in phases earlier. He is also seen draped in the colors of blue, symbolizing tranquility, and an attire similar to that of Buddhist monks. Though there are similarities in the subjects of the painting and theological backgrounds of both, the works and styles of the two paintings are seen as distinct. On the one hand, while the European version depicts him as a Greco-Roman nobleman, on the other hand, the Indian painting treats him as an announcer of material pleasure, leading to a spiritual awakening, symbolized in the European work by Gabriel. Structurally speaking, however, the support material of the painting in the European context may have been a wall or a manuscript on thicker canvas that would have been made of rough, unrefined cotton. And on the other hand, the Indian painting can be found in the Victoria and Albert collection that could be seen in the Akbarnama as a visual depiction of Akbar's policy of religious tolerance, Surya-Kud. Moving on to the next painting, that is the Crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Prior to discussing the scene of the crucifixion itself, its significance must be understood. The crucifixion is seen as the turning point in the Bible, the hinge between the Old and the New Testaments. The painting in this event is commonly seen at the altar of churches. However, in Orthodox churches that would depict the Virgin Mary with the baby Jesus Christ. In the European version of the crucifixion, a number of individuals can be seen around the crucifix that symbolize the centrality, in a way, of the church and the community. The painting shows the Virgin Mary at the center of the scene below the crucifix. The color palette that can be seen in this painting is pale and washed out, so as to depict the somber event. Surrounded by apostles, the Virgin Mary, a gathering storm, and dark hues depict the onset of the death of Jesus Christ. A mystic halo surrounds Jesus Christ and the Virgin Mary, depicting their status as enlightened. The painting is an oil-based one, supported on a wall. In terms of conservation, these paintings are difficult to restore as they need to be removed layer by layer onto support materials of canvas and frames. The community aspect of these paintings also throws light on the centrality of the Christian theme in European art, even in the aftermath of the Reformation. In the next phase of this explanation, I would like to highlight the postural aspects of this painting. The Jesus on the cross is seen to be slumped to one side. However, he continues to hold an erect position. The community seen around the crucifix is seen to be bending in solitude. This is an ideal biblical connotation, where people are seen to be in the servitude of God. The gentle folding of hands seen by the apostles on the right of the crucifix, along with the bending of the Virgin Mary, is seen as an act of support weakened by the loss of her son. However, seen to support others in their sense of grief. The focus is also on other people along with Jesus Christ, also depicting the principle of one among the others. In the Indian interpretation, painted by the artist Keshav Das again, who is heavily influenced in his painting by Christian themes. A Hindu painter of Akbar's court, as highlighted in the painting earlier, the depiction of Jesus Christ in a blue outfit again symbolizes deep-seated knowledge and the rise of spiritual energy that can be seen with the shining halo behind. The technique of this painting is of gentle brushing. The deposition of a thin layer of metal sheet or burnishing of metal is seen on the surface of the painting. His head is seen to slump to one side, thus depicting his dead and lifeless body. However, in Islam, since the depiction of the divine is forbidden, the painting has to be that of a mortal. The painting is also embellished with multiple animals and forms of life on the frame, thus depicting the aspect of divinity visible in the drawing of the subject. The painting frame is not seen to have other members of his clan, thus focusing solely on Jesus, who has been painted in the golden ratio as described in the European context. Now, talking about the Virgin Mary, again, common biblical theme to be painted. Prior to discussing the specific features of this painting of the Virgin Mary herself, it is crucial to throw light on the depiction of women as a whole in Indian and European paintings in this period. European paintings of this phase only view women from the lens of divinity, largely being depicted as the Madonna. The Madonna is often seen as the center of divine scenes, away from the traditional depiction of the Virgin Mary. She is also seen to fuse the roles of the mortal being and the divine. This can be seen in her attire. She is seen in long flowing outfits of colors such as red, green, often in natural surroundings, or regal blue. However, the depiction of white is rare due to the fact that white is associated with angels. Further, women are also depicted in the context of being trader women, in the Dutch Golden Age especially, and regal depictions as queens or as part of royalty. The women in these situations are depicted as structured. When I use the word structured, we would describe a highly defined scene in which they are being painted, either in the context of being a queen or in the context of being a divine figure. However, the Dutch Golden Age breathes new light into the depiction of women. They're depicted in fleeting eye contact that often causes the impression that women are seen to be oppressed. However, this may or may not have been the case. There is cause for debate there. And detailed accounts of women playing important religious roles and socio-economic roles have also emerged. The depiction of the Virgin Mary can be seen as ethereal and having a flowing outfit. The colors worn by her, often emblematic of fertility, she is depicted alongside Jesus Christ. However, it can be seen to reinforce the ideas of patriarchy. In this painting, the Virgin Mary is seen providing support to the figure of Jesus Christ, not standing independently. Mary is seen here in this figure. This is a scene very similar to the Pieta that was sculpted by Michelangelo, again during the phase of the High Room. The depiction of the Virgin Mary in India is seen as unique and, however, very different again to the European style of painting. In Indian painting, broadly, women were depicted either as independent or as dependent on the male figure seen in the painting. In the case of Ragmalas, women were often seen as independent. However, in the case of the Baramasas, they were connected with the Nayaks, creating a universe of their own, unique to each of the Baramasas that were reinforced by the seasonal hues and colors and various other such symbolic depictions seen within the paintings. Women, however, were not commonly depicted in the mainstream schools. However, were depicted as consorts to the divine or as mothers to the divine. Specifically, examples emerging from the Panithani schools. However, women are seen to be depicted as Radha or Yashoda, associated with Lord Krishna. In this painting of the Virgin Mary of the Mughal atelier, she is seen to be supported by a troupe of women, typical of the women in the Mughal Empire, who are often painted with women in waiting. The attire of the Virgin Mary is similar to the typical attire worn by women of this period. She is seen wearing flowing clothes and reclining on a bed. This painting, though not entirely but in part, mirrors scenes from the birth of Selene in the posture and structure adopted by the women who support each other and are generally not depicted independently, as can be seen very clearly from this particular image. Now, moving on briefly to Rembrandt and his attachment with the Mughal painting. Rembrandt and the Mughal influence is under reasonable doubt regarding the route that was used to influence Rembrandt himself, given the fact that he did not travel to India. However, painters of the Mughal exterior seem to have influenced his work. The question of importance here lies in the trade routes that have been used between the Dutch East India Company that ruled the waves between India and the Netherlands in the early phase of foreign settling in India. Travelers often use trading ports to regulate the spice trade, textile trade, and other such trades of importance from India. And there is a custom of giving a gift to honored guests. Some of these gifts could be paintings from Mughal nobility, thus belonging to the Mughal Karkhana. Rembrandt seems to have conducted a close study of these paintings and developing his technique. He thus identifies two types of facial profiles that are turned to one side rather than facing straight, and the straight facing one, namely the ek and the ded chashma. This is important as it allows us to distinguish between noblemen, rulers, and lesser courtiers or supporting characters painted in the bar scenes, diverting the eye of the viewer away from the crowd below the peacock throne into the center of the peacock throne itself, often since it was Shah Jahan's atelier in specific that Rembrandt studied. Rembrandt could have exploited this knowledge to gain a more expensive patronage in the painting of the Ninth Watch. The painting itself depicts a victorious company of soldiers who were painted on the Guildhall of Amsterdam, and it is currently housed at the Rijksmuseum. In this painting, it is clearly visible that one of the commanders is front-facing and the other is seen facing sideways. The Mughal influence can be seen clearly in the structure of armor and attire, as well as the maiden, the mascot visible in the backdrop. The similarity between the jaw structure is also striking. Rembrandt moved away from the traditional depiction of a rounded face in favor of a more miniature style, angular face that refined with the development of regional schools. In the depiction and painting of nature and natural subjects too, there has been a divergence between the Indian and European depictions that are clearly visible in the structure of plants and the color palettes chosen. This can be, however, moving back to the structure of the Ninth Watch, in order to show the contrast, I would like to highlight the Marriage of Dara Shikoh, a painting from Shah Jahan's atelier that was commissioned in 1740 to celebrate the marriage of Dara Shikoh, details of which are visible on your screen, right now. This is the painting itself. Some striking features are that both focus mainly on the face and the facial structure. Differences can be seen in the nose and the eyes. A clear Indian influence can be observed in Rembrandt's work as he closely observed the practices of the Mughal miniatures of Shah Jahan's court. Further, however, there are a host of differences between the two styles that are noted in the night watch being a wall painting, whereas the Mughal miniature style decorated the pages of the Badshahnama that use the decoration of manuscripts and biographies. However, Rembrandt also used oil-based pigments that were paints fused with animal fats. The priming material used on the backs of Mughal miniatures again being wasli and white lead powder in the European context. Moving on to this painting by Mansoor. The color palette here, as alluded earlier about natural subjects, the color palette is a bright one. It is orange, green and yellow. This is actually a border depiction. It is from the frame of another miniature. It is seen to be bright, lively, and a symbol of life in itself. However, the painting not of a similar phase, since the similar phase of the European period would have seen a more simplistic and naturalistic school of landscape. And the painting, however, is one that is popularly identifiable, The Sunflowers by Vincent van Gogh. This painting has a more somber, a paler color palette. It is much darker, drooping, almost to depict lifelessness, as compared to the Indian equivalent of flowers where they were depicting life. Here they're almost depicting misery. And this also is, of course, emblematic of a painter's frame of mind when dealing with a subject. However, these differences aside, there is the fact that while painting this, Vincent van Gogh actually felt deprived of inspiration that he gained in France, and therefore he moved to Holland. And some of the similarities and differences between these paintings, and the paintings are created in different historical periods, one in the Mughal and the other in the 19th century Europe. The second point of difference would be the medium of oil and water-based paintings. Van Gogh paints flowers in an artificial setting and Mansoor in a natural one. So in the artificial setting, they tend to droop, they tend to not thrive. Moving back to the influences of Rembrandt, we see here now a pencil sketch of Shah Jahan with his son Dara Shikoh. Pencil sketched, charcoal sketched on paper by Rembrandt. This depiction is one of a series of 12 pencil sketches that have been used as a background to the night watch, to what the night watch became. And they provide the structure, they provide the shape, the structure, and the overall interpretation of the tradesmen and the guildsmen as seen in the later phases of Rembrandt's life. In fact, Rembrandt himself paints self-portraits that are influenced and deeply inspired by the Mughal, by the Persianate, and by the Asian schools of thinking and the Asian styles of art. Therefore, we do see that kind of a symbiotic relationship actually developing. Further, now talking about the symbols, the biblical symbols. Mughal paintings are often mirrors to local beliefs and traditions. In the period of Jahangir and Shah Jahan, India opened her doors to an increased interaction with Christianity as a faith in terms of painting that could be seen. In Jahangir's atelier, the usage of biblical symbols for legitimization became increasingly common, depicting the bonds of supremacy, diplomacy, and suzerainty. The bond of supremacy is best depicted in the painting of Akbar, where he holds the world in his hands, like the Creator, God in the context of the Bible, and at his feet rest the lion and the lamb, symbolizing his control over these elements and the rise of justice all over his realm. In the atelier of Jahangir, the depiction of Jahangir being handed the world from Akbar can be seen not only as a symbol of legitimization but also the depiction of biblical myth of the Tower of Babel. Though not accurately, it does not reflect the changing of the world with the death of Akbar, however, likening his rule to the world prior to the Great Flood. Biblical themes are often depicted to have diplomatic relations, as can be seen in the painting of The Dream of Jahangir by Abul Hassan. In this painting, Jahangir is seen painted on the world. This is a depiction of the unguided being steered towards the guidance and spiritual awakening, similar to Judaism and Christianity. However, in the Islamic context, it can be said to depict a call for fearlessness and justice. In the court of Shah Jahan, Jesus Christ and the Virgin Mary are often depicted in these two corners, overlooking the peacock throne, as a symbol of legitimization, along with his father Jahangir and his grandfather Akbar. Talking about the conservation aspects of Indian Mughal miniature paintings, we see primarily two aspects. One are the internal aspects of deterioration. Internal aspects of deterioration would be faulty materials. By faulty materials, it would be the wrong kind of pigment, maybe for a support material, for an incorrect kind of support material, a thicker paint type for a thinner support material, a lower quality, some kind of, maybe a kind of adulteration of the pigments that would tend to deteriorate the quality of the painting over a shorter span of time. However, what can be controlled by modern day conservationists, what can be controlled by museums, are the external factors. First and foremost is humidity. Humidity is primarily the climatic controls that a painting may be exposed to in ways of moisture due to improper storage, due to fluctuating climatic conditions. So in a way, climate change, irregular rains, unseasonal rainfall would be a primary cause of deterioration for priceless works such as the miniatures that would fall prey to humidity, untimely humidity, if not carefully stored in airtight showcases and display cases. The second being UV rays. UV rays, though not extremely common, but can be seen in the phase of pigment recognition. When scientists do pigment studies, UV rays are often used to depict the infrared, to find out a grade of color, to find out a grade of a certain pigment, maybe often reds and blues turn up only under UV rays. Therefore, it is steps such as restricted cross-sectioning and restricted exposure to UV rays that would actually protect certain pigments, certain kinds of pigments. The next is the artificial light source. Artificial light sources are often used either above, below, or from the sides of important pieces of art to showcase them at museums. However, for example, this is very prominent at the Louvre with the Mona Lisa. Millions of people coming to view the painting each day, and the artificial light sources that are created within the chamber. However, the Louvre has interestingly found a method around this. They have multiple copies of the Mona Lisa that are rotated. So one need not actually see an original work. It may well be a copy. However, this is not entirely feasible as I see it for a Mughal miniature, because Mughal miniatures are extremely difficult, laborious and time consuming to create even one of. So creating copies, unless they are digital print, is not something that can be done, I don't think, at a large scale for miniatures. Next, we have pollution and biological growths that also lead to acidity, the acidification of paper, the acidification of pigments that leads to a changing of the pigment, the changing of the color brilliance that we might see, or the threat of biological growths as a combination of these factors that would, at the end of the day, leave certain irreparable damage if not regulated. Now I'm going to portray some kinds of damage that we have seen. For example, here we see flaking. Flaking could be, here this flaking could be an outcome of pollution, it could be an outcome of actually too much light exposure, unstable conditions. Next, we see biological growths on a painting. Here we see silverfish having attacked a painting and actually destroyed most of it. It's not identifiable. And that brings me to the end of the presentation. Thank you so much. We would now be looking at some questions. And so for that I'll come down.
Wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I had some questions, but I couldn't stop her talking. It was very interesting. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen, please?
None of us know the subject enough to ask questions.
Then you should ask more questions, because Aparna has definitely done a lot of deep study in this, and whatever questions you have, I know she is equipped to handle them.
It was very interesting. So,
If there are any questions, I would be more than happy to answer. They need not be directly associated with the topic, even broadly on miniatures, I would be happy to answer. Since I do understand that this is a highly specialized area of study and people do not generally venture into this.
That's why it's difficult to ask questions on a subject you
Yes.
don't know enough.
Well, just Hippocrates the word first doctor, he used to say in his Latin dictum, as longa vita brevis, that is, art is long, life is short. Can you further extrapolate this dictum, Latin dictum by Hippocrates, that as longa vita brevis, art is long, life is short?
Well, yes, absolutely. From the contents of my book to multiple other literature, we see that the art of these people, the art that people created, seems to have lived much longer. We still talk about Shah Jahan, we still talk about Akbar, we still talk about Jahangir. Not only in our history books, we know their faces, we know what they look like. And this is a direct outcome of the paintings that they have left us. Not only in the medieval period, in fact, moving as far back as the Mesolithic and the Neolithic periods, we see paintings, we see anthropomorphic images, something that can be seen and used to recreate the stories and to recreate the civilizations of the past. For example, an example that I touched upon in the research of this book and in the text itself as well. Not delving much into cave art because that's not really directly involved with the evolution of miniatures itself. But the evolution of miniature paintings can be seen from the Buddhist Tanga and the Jain Vastrapat art. The Buddhist Tanga art not only is mythological in nature, it depicts the Buddha, the Tara, the energies of the white, the red, the yellow and the green Taras, all of which come together to actually form the energies of individuals, which is beautifully written down and explained actually in the Pitaks, in their religious books. And therefore, the Buddhist art in itself is not only reflecting who those people were, but whom we are. What the being of an individual is. Similarly for Jain, the Vastrapat. The Vastrapat was used by the trading community to decorate their guild halls, to decorate their homes, to decorate meeting places and commercial centers. Even today, the Jain community is primarily known for their trading activities, for their mercantile activities and enterprise. And it is in the Vastrapat that often these paintings are emblematic of the ties that they built, of the ties that they have developed. Talking about the primary focus of my book, which is Mughal miniatures. Mughal miniatures in their highest phase, that is the phase from what I would call Akbar's atelier right down to Shah Jahan's atelier. We talk about the court, the darbar, and the rituals of the darbar, the kinds that were also seen to have influenced British India. The ideas of supremacy, the ideas of suzerainty and legitimization that are a common thread in Indian as well as in European art. And it is these stories that actually influence people even to this day. What is the first thing that a politician or a person of influence would do even today? Institute a statue, institute a painting or a portrait of themselves. In fact, one of the most important elements of leaving office is the unveiling of an official portrait. So the unveiling of an official portrait, though not something seen as early as in this phase, but the ideas of an official portrait are something that are seen right from the medieval times, right from the time when the absolutist monarch takes control. So yes, art does live longer. It tells us a much longer story. And it is, since it is material heritage, it is passed down and conserved from one generation to the next. So something that was maybe painted in the 16th, 17th or 18th century, so far back as the 20th or 21st century, may be conserved and maybe passed down. So yes, it does live longer than the mortal individual.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
It's a lovely presentation. Also, I just love the idea because when we talk about Renaissance art, there's the sheer expanse, especially with the biblical art, the kind of sizes at which they were done is in juxtaposition to the miniatures which is made. I actually want to know about the conservation bit, the different color palettes that we see in the two art forms. Which is more difficult in terms of conservation?
Yes, ma'am. So in terms of conservation, I would say that a European fresco art is much more challenging to conserve, simply because mostly they are immobile. Mostly they are fixed either to a wall or to ceilings that would expect a venue to shut down for a specific amount of time, or the exhibit to go off public display for a considerable amount of time. For example, currently we are seeing the restoration of the night watch. That is something that we are seeing right now. I think next year it should be giving over, but they've had to shut down that entire exhibit of the Rijks just so that it can be restored, since the painting itself, due to its scale and its expanse, cannot be moved around to a conservation lab, such as the facilities seen at the National Museum or at their own scientific institutions. Mughal miniatures have their own challenges. Yes, I would say that they have their own challenges because paper as a support material is much more fragile and much more open to wear and tear if not handled carefully. Therefore, the kind of specialization, the kind of care that is required by the conservator is much more in Mughal miniature paintings. However, because they are smaller in size and much lighter and easier actually to move around, their conservation efforts are of a much wider expanse. Often it can take up to a couple of months, even a few years. But that is just that one exhibit going off public display. An entire gallery need not be shut down all at once for that one painting to actually go for restoration and conservation purposes. I hope I have answered your question.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am?
I always believe that writing is so much more easier than presenting, and I think you've conquered it today. So congratulations for that.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
I just have this one, you made an interesting point, and I just wanted you to expand on it maybe a little further. You mentioned that the Baramasa paintings versus the Ragmala paintings, we have the Nayikas often taking center stage in the Ragmala series, whereas a lot of the Nayikas tend to play a more supporting role in the Baramasa. So a little bit more about that.
Yes, so in the Ragmala series is actually a fusion of the vocal tradition of Indian music and the painting traditions of the Mughal court. So what we actually see in the Ragmalas is the Raginis and the Ragputris, or the female rags, being depicted often alone. They're often depicted alone. For example, Ragini Asavari is depicted alone. Ragini Bhairavi is depicted alone. Ragini Asavari is depicted alone. They are often depicted in their own kind of, they hold center stage. They are primary rags, and because they are primary rags that form the basis of thoughts, that is the classification of Indian music, they are actually held in a greater esteem. However, in the Baramasa styles of paintings, what we see that since it is an interpretation of the Ras Leela, there is that subtle interplay of Krishna and the Nayak. The Nayak in the form of being proud, of being the central figure. Often the Nayaka depressed, disappointed, waiting for her lover. That is the scene that we see. It is not, however, there are differences within the Ashtanayaka. The Ashtanayaka, some of them are more independent than the others. However, the independence and the fearsome aspects of their personality are only highlighted and only come out in support to the Nayak. So it is only when the Nayak, for example, does not come to her house or does not come to her abode that we see anger or that we see disappointment. It is not her character trait, it is not her personality trait. It is not something that we see the depiction of Shakti, for example. Like, we do not see that kind of depiction of Shakti coming out in the Varamasa phase. In the Ragmalas, that is there. Asavari is commonly depicted with snakes. Asavari is a maiden commonly depicted with snakes. Snakes associated with more, brave and more confident kind of emotions. And therefore, that is, I feel, something that is distinct to schools. The Ragmala traditionally associated with the Rajasthan school, and the Baramasa traditionally associated with the Pahari school of art. However, this is not to depict the individual role that women may have played in the society. That may be totally different and maybe a cause of debate. However, this is what we can say looking at the paintings. I hope I've been able to answer the question.
Well answered, thank you.
For your time in this whole meeting. It's been a lovely presentation and lovely evening. A lot of knowledge that has been gained today, I guess. So thank you very much, Aparna, and wish you lots of happy set books and lots of reading fans and lots of such presentations in future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was lovely to have all of you and all your attention for my presentation.
It was tremendous learning for us. Tremendous learning.